Welcome everyone, this is Ramon Ricardo. This is going to sound like I'm speaking on school things, but because, I was speaking a little bit on mathematical things, I was just talking about like science theory and all that, and I was speaking about, apostrophe. But let me get into a subject that, I'm not, people are like, Mike, are you taking this back to school? No. What I'm doing, I'm basically giving you a way, in a metaphorically way, of looking at things. Language arts. Okay. Subject is language arts. Why would it be language and then arts? Or the art of language? The art of language is something that has been extended for years and years and centuries, millennials, and all that. Language arts. When it comes to the way we are looking at the word, people have had so many questions on the word, saying, why do we have the word like thee, thou, thy, and all that, and yea, and so let's look into that. See, there's timings when the dictionary was coming out, there was timings where words are still being developed. A lot of people will say there was no such thing as a J. Okay, well, the J, yeah, that was more of a newer thing to come afterward, but it was still something seen that was almost like a J when it came to Greek, and it looked like an I. And so, like I said, this is such a deep subject because, this is me breaking it down in such a short amount of time. We had the Bible where it came from the Hebrew translation. It came from Hebrew, Old Testament Hebrew. New Testament Greek. Paul was dealing with certain people in different areas to finally meet with a child named Timothy, or a young man named Timothy. I'm not going to say child, but young man named Timothy. And what he was looking at was somebody who can relate to other people. It took for having the Hebrew side of the word to go into the Greek side of the word, and translating from Yeshua to Jesus, to Jesus, or Yahweh. So everybody would say, well, what is his name Jesus then? Well, if you think about it, the way that the Greek translation came into English, just like the whole entire Bible going from Hebrew and Greek to English, that means whatever we're saying, the Bible doesn't have all the 100% characters in English that it would have as far as between Greek and Hebrew. Hebrew and Greek had its own way of having the characters translated. And so the translations had to come in that way. Hebrew to Greek had its different translations where there's different characters that were utilized from our language. Then from Greek to English had to be different characters. That's why they call what we have the King James Bible. King James, notice I'm not saying all the other different versions, but the King James becoming the majority text. Nothing's taken out of it, no words are taken out of it. The majority text is translated from Greek and Hebrew. And people may disagree on what I'm speaking about, but there'll be people who actually study to show themselves approved. Because when you have an interlinear Bible to go with the Greek Hebrew and then the King James, the interlinear will take the words piece by piece, put the Hebrew, they'll have Greek under it, and then they'll have English. And the Hebrew and the Greek and the English have their way of aligning each other. And you'll take it and you'll spell into it and say, this is the reason why it's a majority text. You'll have hyphens, you'll have certain things that are there, and those hyphens will show that when something's a capital and when something's a lowercase. That way you know when God is a lowercase God, which means it's a God of the world. And you'll be an uppercase God, which means it's our Father in heaven. And so, like I said, language arts really with the Bible is very, very key. Because people nowadays in this new society that we have want to go by a 1980s Bible, want to go by these new version Bibles with people's names published, want to have some type of etching in there. And what we are doing now is we're following deception. People don't know that. And so I stick with the majority text, which is the King James Bible. Even though so many people will say, well, thee, they, thy. I mean, thee, thy, and then thou, and all these other different things. Forget about that part of it if it's confusing. And then, things like seeketh and, things like that, and there's just so many different things in there. But when you really look into the word, and you follow it by a linear way, you'll actually see how it's been broken down. And you'll see that the characters that are placed there are there for a reason. That you're translating, just like when you have English to Spanish. Not all the characters of Spanish are in English. So somebody will say, well, how are you supposed to say that, okay, there was no such thing as this when it comes to this? Yeah, that's true. They had to make it towards where Spanish people understand English, where, French people have to understand Spanish or English or Hebrew or Greek. You have all these different translations with different characters of their alphabet. There's no J in the Bible. Yes, there really is. It's a translation from Hebrew to Greek to a J from the English. Where the Y was like an I and then the I was like a J. Only thing was the I put a hook to it. And like I said, there will be so much disagreement to it. There will be so many different opinions to what I'm speaking on when it comes to this subject, language arts. But keep in mind that the translations, majority text, the original translations, God would not be putting out different versions of the Bible saying that you've been following the wrong Bible for this amount of centuries. Or that you've been following this wrong Bible for this long. No, he wouldn't do that. Why would he want to switch the word up? So like I said, I'm going to touch much further on this. This is going to be a series, a big series. What I spoke about in another video, I'm basically saying that the same thing that I was talking about is going to be a series. I'm going to basically make that happen. So then that way everybody can actually take in this true subject of why following the majority text is more important than these brand new different texts. That we can really see the truth of real language arts being put into play and how we can get all these weird doctrines and people saying so many different things that can confuse us and make us not want to follow because we don't know what to follow now. I want to make sure I bring some clarity to that to the best of my ability. Because I'm just one person. But I can allow God to help me through this process of making sure I break it down. So then it's not me, but it's me following the Lord and how I can make it much more clear to people. So I want to end with that. Again, my name is Ramon Ricardo. Know that God loves you and that I love you. You all take care and God bless.